Lucky man that I am, yesterday I received my advanced copy of Nightfall, a deck building game where you are a lord of evil and you send vampires and werewolves to attack the other players. I got it yesterday, read the rules yesterday and played it today for the first time. Now, I don't usually review games the first day that I play them, however, another thing that is uncommon is that I play a 45-minute game for 6 hours and a half straight, which is what happened today. I started playing it before I went to a game night, then I went to a game night, and everybody got hooked. We were completely addicted to it. It was a game after the other. I played it with 2 players, with 3 players, with 5 players, and after this marathon that went from 6 p.m. to half past midnight, I think that I have enough ideas and impressions to share with you. It is a very addictive game, it's very engaging, it is a deck building game that feels nothing like Dominion, believe it or not. How can that happen? Well, bear with me for the next 10-12 minutes and you're gonna find out. You can set up the game randomly using the draft cards, which are very similar to the randomizer cards in Thunderstone. For each of these draft cards, you have a matching stack of cards, or you can just decide and agree with the other players on the decks that you want to use for that game. At the beginning of the game, there will be 8 decks of cards in the middle of the table for everybody to purchase, and then every player will also have 2 special decks in front of him. Those are his special archives, his personal archives, and he'll be the only person allowed to purchase cards from there. Then, of course, every player has a starting deck of minions. It's an identical deck of 12 minions. You shuffle it, you get a hand of 5 cards, and that's your initial hand. And also there will be in the middle of the table a deck of 1 cards. You will use 10 cards per player, so 3 players, 30 cards. Each time that a player deals a hit on another player, that player will have to take a 1 and put it in his discard pile, and you just play and go through the 1 deck until the last 1 card is dealt to somebody. At that point, the game is over. You count how many cards everybody has in their deck, and the player with the lowest number of 1 cards in his deck is the winner and the new overlord of dark and evil in the world of Nightfall. Each turn has 4 phases, and the first one is combat. So when it is your turn, you will look at your minions that will be in play in front of you, and I'll explain later how you get them to be there, and you will look at their strength, which is that number, you see that. That is the amount of damage that they can deal. So you just look at them and you send them out to attack the other players. You can send all your minions against 1 player or divide them the way you want, against multiple players, against 2 players. You just send them out the way you want. What happens is that they will immediately deal that damage to the other player. However, as you can see, minions also have a number of red slashes around their card, and that is their health, how many hits they can take before they're removed. So if you're sending these out against your enemy, the enemy will use his minions to absorb some of those hits. Suppose, for example, this is a pretty powerful attack. It's 10 in attack. Suppose that this player sends out those minions against a player who owns those 2 minions. So this minion has 4, this minion has 3. Again, the attack is 10. They both will be destroyed and they will go in the discard pile. There's still 3 points that need to be paid, and then the owning player will have to take 3 wound cards and put them in the discard pile. So that's the way combat basically works. Next, you enter the chain phase, which is when cards actually enter the game. The player whose turn is will play a card on the table to start a chain. As you can see, cards have a big moon of a certain color here, and then they have 2 or occasionally 1 smaller moons of different colors. So the player plays a card, then he can attach to that card in a chain another card that has a big moon of one of the colors of the small one. In this case, he could attach a card which is a blue moon or a purple moon, and he decides to attach this one. Then, next, suppose he also has this card in his hand, so he decides he wants to attach it there, which he can because big red moon, small red moon. And he can attach as many as he wants. Then, when he's done, however, the game goes around the table and every other player has the opportunity to do the same. That is, to continue the chain. Suppose the next player has this card in his hand, then he can attach it because, yellow moon and yellow moon. You just put it separately so that you remember whose cards are whose, which cards are whose. And then suppose we have a green one, then he plays it like this. Then suppose he does this other thing. So actually, if you have cards with only one moon, it could be good because it makes it harder for other people to continue the chain. And again, all players will have the chance to attach as many cards as they want. They have a chance to do it once, but that one time as many cards as they want. So it's really important that you create powerful combos in your hand. Then once the chain is completed, you will start resolving the cards, but this is interesting, starting from the last cards and going backwards. So actually, the player whose turn is the start of the chain is going to be the last one to resolve the cards. To resolve the cards, you will see that they have, most of them, have a tag that says chain. This is the effect that happens when you're activating the card from the chain. For example, this is the case, we start resolving the chain, we go here, we activate this card, and the effect is exile, again, remove from the game a target card from your discard pile. So this is a good opportunity to get rid, for example, of a wound card from your pile. After you resolve a character, a minion, you place it in front of yourself, which is how the minions enter the game. And then you go to the next one. This one doesn't have any chain effect, so it just goes in front of the player. So it's just a good way of bringing the guy in the game, which is good for defense, this guy is. There's guy here, well, very violent, same thing, doesn't have chain effects, but the player got to put it in front of himself like this. And then if the card is an action, you can tell the actions because they have the steel frame here. Then you just perform the action, chain, inflict 2 damage on each of target player's minions. It's going to be pretty gruesome. And then once the action is resolved, it goes in the discard pile of the player. And then you just keep going backward until you get to resolve all the cards in the chain. You sent your minions out for combat, you did all sorts of nasty things during the chain phase, and now it is time to get new followers and new actions in the influence phase, which is when you spend influence points to buy new cards from the 8 that are in the central area of the game, or from the 2 special decks that you have, and those are your personal archives. You're the only player that can buy from those. Each turn you will receive 2 influence points just as a standard quantity, and then you can get some extra influence points from the effect of some cards. For example, this card will give you some extra influence points. Also, you get extra influence points by discarding cards that you have in your hand and place them in your discard pile. So, for example, in this case, suppose I have a hand of 4, I can decide I just put these cards in my discard pile, I don't use them for anything else. Now I have my 2 standard points, those 4 have 6 influence points that I can spend to buy new cards, and the cost in terms of influence is indicated by that yellow number there. Now, for example, if I have 6 influence points, I can buy 3 copies of this card, or 1 and 1 and 1, 2 of this card, any combination including multiple copies of the same card. So you buy cards and then you place them in your discard pile. After the influence phase, you enter the last part of your turn, which is the cleanup phase, in which you might have a lot of cards in your hand, or some cards, or even no cards whatsoever, in case you just converted everything. If you still have wound cards, then you can use them for the special effect that takes place during the cleanup phase, again, which makes them a little more interesting than just penalties. And if you have more than 5 cards, nothing happens. If you have less than 5 cards in your hand, then you draw from your pile, from your deck, up to 5. And at that moment, your turn is over and the game goes to the next player to start with his attacks, his chain, and so on and so forth. In the end, this is just a phenomenal game. It's very different from other deck building games in that you have much more control on your cards, on the speed you go through your deck, for how long you have your cards, how many you want to have in your hand. A lot of strategy there. It is great that finally we have a game that is about deck building and is highly interactive. It's not everybody playing their solitaire game. Both, of course, because you send your minions against the other players, but also because you can interact with the other people's chains. Remember, when somebody starts a chain, you have the opportunity of adding your cards after your cards will be resolved first, so you can definitely interfere with other players' plans. Great thing there. Also, because you don't have to wait until your turn comes around again, you can potentially add your cards to any player's chains. Great thing. With 5 players, we found it could be sometimes a little slow, but maybe it's also because we're new players. Maybe with experienced players it goes differently. With 2 players, it can be really confrontational. It's just my monsters trying to kill you and your monsters trying to kill me. Also, the system with 2 players seems to be more unforgiving. If you make a mistake for whatever reason, you have no minions to defend you, your opponent manages to mount a powerful attack, deals you 10 wounds. In a 2-player game, it might be hard then for you to catch up. However, with 3 players, and I imagine it's for 4 players too, the game absolutely shines. In that situation, you have no interest in dealing 20 wounds to one player and 0 to the other one, because you're still gonna lose the game to that other player. So you're gonna try to balance your attacks and distribute them as evenly as possible. There might be times where 2 players might gang up against one of the player, which is perceived as the leader. Then the player will become less powerful, the allegiances will switch. So even though it's everybody trying to stab each other in the back, it becomes sort of like equal opportunity backstabbers, and we did not end up hating each other. I still believe, since it's a confrontational game, you need the right crowd, but I think it really works. The cards are very well balanced, not because they're all the same, but because the players can interact with them and even them out. There are certain cards that are extremely powerful, but as soon as they come out, everybody targets them. So actually, you might not have any chance of using your most powerful cards. I believe the majority of ones that I've seen dealt in our games were from low-profile cards, much more than from the uber powerful ones. So there's just so much balance. It's a phenomenally solid design. We played many games, tried every card, and every game was different challenges, different approaches that were coming out, more layers of depth that we were discovering. Just an amazingly addictive game. It's very thematic. I don't know if the horror theme will make the audience shrink. It's confrontation, maybe that also will affect the audience to some degree. However, it is just such a good game that I cannot imagine this not becoming an instant classic, a must in the collection of any deck building gamer. Not because it's going to substitute Dominion or Thunderstone, but it's because it's going to give you a completely different experience. It is just a great game. Nightfall. Highly, highly recommended. A simply awesome game.